afternoon, Excellencies. Thank you so much. Once again, good afternoon, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. I request you all to keep your mobile phones in silence. Thank you. It is my pleasure to welcome you all to the lecture by His Excellency Dr. Mamadou Tangara, Minister for Foreign Affairs, International Cooperation and Gambians Abroad of the Republic of the Gambia on multilateralism and its role in building and sustaining peace in Africa and Asia. It is also my pleasure to welcome former Ambassador H.H.S. Viswanathan, Distinguished Fellow Observer Research Foundation, who will be chairing today's lecture. The program for the evening is as follows. It will start with the welcome remarks by Director General, ICWA, Dr. T.C.A. Raghavan, followed by the brief remarks by the Chair, Ambassador Mr. Viswanathan, and thereafter His Excellency Dr. Mamadou Tangara will deliver the lecture, which will be followed by question and answer session and closing remarks by the Chair. We hope to conclude the program by 16:35 hours. Now, I request Dr. T.C.A. Raghavan, DC ICWA, to kindly give his welcome remarks. Thank you, sir.
Good afternoon. Your Excellency, Dr. Mamadou Tangara, it's a great honor for us to welcome you and your very distinguished delegation, His Excellency Mr. Ibrima Kamara, Secretary General, Office of the President, the High Commissioner, who is well known to many of us in Delhi, Janaba, Jagne, other members of the delegation of the Gambia. Your Excellency, it's a great honor for us to have you with us in the Council, and I'm especially glad that Ambassador H.H.S. Viswanathan, who has been one of our most distinguished diplomats, served in Africa for many years. He has been High Commissioner in Nigeria, he was Ambassador in the Côte d'Ivoire, and in those capacities spent many years both in West Africa as also in East Africa, if I'm not mistaken.
No, not in East Africa.
Not in East Africa. But he heads the Africa division of the Observer Research Foundation and provides the ideal chair for this afternoon's discussions. If I may briefly say, Dr. Tangara is ideally suited to speak at a platform such as the ICWA because he combines a very distinguished career in diplomacy and public service with extremely powerful academic credentials. He is a demographer by training, has been ambassador to the UN, and of course is one of the senior public figures of the African continent. Your Excellency, if I could mention a little bit about our Council at the outset. As I mentioned, this is India's oldest think tank, set up some years before our independence in 1943, and it was an endeavor of public intellectuals and scholars interested in foreign policy and international affairs at that time to develop an independent Indian perspective on world affairs. While it is India's oldest think tank, possibly, and I was told this yesterday, possibly it is Asia's oldest think tank, and it has functioned continuously from 1943. We bring out a journal which has come out continuously since 1946. We have our own publications program. We have a very strong research faculty, and part of our endeavor is to bridge the gap between the policy world of the government and the larger foreign policy and strategic fraternity or community of India. We have partnerships all across the world and also all over India. We pay a great deal of attention to our Africa program, and it is especially important to us because we have amongst the regular visitors to the Council a large number of students from the universities around Delhi, and for them to hear authentic African voices firsthand is very important, because so much of what we otherwise hear about Africa is through the filter of a Western perspective. And therefore, in terms of the understanding by which the Council was set up in 1943, it is very important that we develop our own independent perspective on Africa. Your presence here today to speak on this very important subject of multilateralism and its role in building and sustaining peace in Africa and Asia provides us just that opportunity to engage and interface with a senior public figure from the Gambia. I know you've had a very busy day today, and I was privy to some of the discussions with the External Affairs Minister, and I would like to congratulate you on a very successful visit, but also say how very grateful we are that you could find time to come to the Council and spend some time with us. Thank you very much, High Commissioner, for making sure that the Foreign Minister's program included a visit to this Council. And I would like to take this opportunity of informing His Excellency Mr. Brima Camera that I do hope you will recollect our activities when you go back to Gambia, and we would very much look forward to continuing this association. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. I would now like to hand over to Ambassador Viswanathan to conduct the rest of the proceedings. Thank you.
Thank you, Director General Raghavan. Good afternoon, everyone. Excellency Dr. Mamadou Tangara, the Foreign Minister of the Gambia, the distinguished members of the delegation, Excellency, Her Excellency, the High Commissioner of Gambia to India, friends, ladies and gentlemen. It's a great honor for me to chair today's session. There's such a distinguished speaker is at the ICWA, and I would like to thank the Director General and the ICWA for inviting me to do the needful today. The Council has already circulated the CV of His Excellency Dr. Mamadou Tangara, so I won't read out the whole thing, the impressive CV of the Minister, but I would like to highlight some of the points which shows what a remarkable career he has had. His Excellency Dr. Mamadou Tangara is the Minister for Foreign Affairs, International Cooperation and the Gambians abroad of the Republic of the Gambia. Prior to serving in this capacity, he was the ambassador and permanent representative of their permanent mission in the United Nations in New York. He served as Minister for Higher Education, Research, Science and Technology in the Gambia. As ambassador and permanent representative to the UN, His Excellency has represented the Gambia on the executive boards of many UN bodies. What is remarkable is his academic background. Dr. Tangara holds a doctorate degree from the Université de Limoges in France. His research on myths and secrets of oral histories of Mandinga has received wide acclaim. And what is remarkable is he is a multilinguist. He speaks English, French, Spanish, Mandinga, Wolof, Bambara, Diula, Creole. What is left?
That competes with us in India.
It's amazing. And this has helped him to be an interpreter, lecturer, and journalist, and also in understanding other cultures. He is the best person to talk about the topic today, that is multilateralism and its role in building and sustaining peace in Africa and Asia. This is a subject which is very dear to India also, multilateralism. In fact, India and Africa have been staunch supporters of multilateralism because that was the way by which kind of marginalized countries could put out their voice on the international scene. But of late, there is a feeling that multilateralism is being diluted by some countries taking unilateral action. And many countries around the world, in Asia, Africa, and even in Europe, want to revive the multilateralism of the second half of the last century. But here there is a slight nuance. Starting with the BRICS summit in Johannesburg, the Indian Prime Minister, Mr. Narendra Modi, has been insisting on having a new kind of multilateralism, what he termed as a modified or reformed multilateralism. He repeated that also at the G20 meeting in Buenos Aires. The idea is, even though the multilateralism of the second half of the last century worked well at that time, there is a feeling that it has run its course. The developing countries now have a greater voice. A lot of developing countries have improved their economy, and the global focus and the fulcrum of the economic activity has shifted to the so-called South. So in this context, we need a new kind of genuine multilateralism, where the majority of the countries in the world, that means the emerging economies and the developing countries, must have a greater voice. And it is here where India and Africa can work together and to see that the old structures and institutions are reformed and modified to suit the current reality of the world. With those few words, I'll hand over the mic to you, because people are waiting to hear your vision and your ideas on multilateralism and its role in building and sustaining peace in Africa and Asia. Excellency, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Your Excellency, Ambassador Viswanathan, I understand you spent some time in our part of the world, and it's a pity that you didn't visit the Gambia. Because, mind you, at some point, the English wanted to exchange, the French wanted to exchange Gabon with Gambia, and they refused. The British refused. And when they refused that, they proposed Côte d'Ivoire. Oh. So Côte d'Ivoire could have been Anglophone and Gambia Francophone, but we are here. To the Director General Raghavan, I'm really delighted to be with you. The Secretary General Office of the President and Head of the Civil Service, Your Excellency, the Gambia's High Commissioner to India, the Joint Secretary, distinguished ambassadors, my friend, I'm seeing my friend Kase, we were in New York together. Welcome, my brother. Ladies and gentlemen, all protocols duly and respectfully observed. I'm delighted to be here with you today, and I will definitely focus on Africa. Asia, I will not deliberate much on Asia, but I will talk about Africa. I really thank you for the opportunity to be able to interact with this distinguished group as we deliberate on gathering on ways and means acceptable to move away from conflict management to conflict prevention through diplomatic channels. I deem it worthy to note and to remind that this daunting task has been at the heart of the United Nations Secretary General's good office since its founding in 1945. 73 years on, we have seen our organization, the United Nations, grown and equipped with a wider range of conflict prevention tools at its disposal than ever before, and yet only a few success stories. It raises a pertinent question on what must we do as a people guided by the founding principles enshrined in the United Nations Charter, to which we must be true. We acknowledge and recognize efforts made since 2006 by the UN in professionalizing suggestions made by numerous statesmen into an established mediation support unit, which, among other things, provides support and advice to envoys in the field and manages a standby team of mediation experts deployable anywhere in the world within 72 hours. It is without a doubt that this established professional body has played and will continue to play a crucial role in its attempt to prevent conflict or the escalation of conflict by diplomatic means. However, time has availed us enough space to learn from its several years of preventive diplomacy and time has also provided us with wisdom to agree or disagree on its success. In this view, it is noticeable that there is indeed a new appetite among United Nations member states and agencies to move towards preventive action where all indications are geared towards blast. Mindful of this economic appeal, yet it is advisable, in our view, to engage and employ a balanced approach of preventive diplomacy and preventive action. The idea to devote a relatively modest amount of resources to preventing violent conflict rather than investing in drastically more costly humanitarian peacekeeping, reconstruction, or stabilization operations. However, the concept of preventive action has proven to be controversial, and there appears to be a consensus that conflict prevention through diplomatic means is better calculative and politically acceptable norm that takes into account opinions of sovereign states as well as other interested parties. And it helps to prevent dispute and conflicts which could potentially pose a threat to regional peace and stability from arising between states. With all this in mind and the unflinching support that we have for preventive diplomacy, we propose that consideration should be given to action-oriented conflict prevention in some cases and where necessary, meaning each case should be determined in accordance with its circumstances. And there we will talk about the cooperation of the UN with regional bodies. And I think the case of the Gambia is a pertinent example of a good collaboration between the United Nations, ECOWAS, and our member states. The concept of the United Nations cooperation with regional bodies is not just an imaginary concept, rather a legally embedded concept in Chapter 8 of the United Nations Chapter. The Secretary General, Mr. Antonio Guterres, has also repeatedly echoed the concept in his many statements made on peace building and peacekeeping operations. The concept of cooperation set our organization to cooperate the United Nations with regional mechanisms or agencies dealing with matters relating to the maintenance of international peace and security as are appropriate for regional action and are existing and acting consistently with the purpose and principles of the United Nations. Although the UN Charter deliberately provides no precise definition of regional arrangements and agencies, we must make good use of the flexibility for any action taken by a group of states to deal with a matter appropriate for regional action that could contribute to the maintenance of international peace and security. In Africa, regional and sub-regional arrangements such as the African Union, Intergovernmental Authority on Development, IGAD, Economic Community of West Africa, and the Southern African Development Community, SADC, have jointly participated with the United Nations regarding different conflict situations. And here I will take you to the Gambia experience. You all know that in 2017 we had elections in the Gambia. After the election, the president accepted defeat just to make a U-turn a week after. So during those difficult periods, we remember we mobilized a group of ambassadors because we told them in life there are defining moments in history where you have to take a decision. Because during that week, the Gambia was the star of Africa. And I remember I was in a program, an award ceremony, attended by the late UNFPA Director, Dr. Babatunde, of blessed memory. And he did not know that I was in the hall. And he was saying that as African, he was very proud that week because Gambia has shown the example to the world. That after 22 years of a very strong dictatorial regime, we went into election and the president conceded defeat. So we had no lesson to receive from anyone. And everybody applauded. And someone mentioned that I was in the hall, and I stood up and everybody was clapping. But during those days, people were clapping, but I was worried because I've been the foreign minister of the president. I've been very close to him. And knowing him and knowing my society, knowing the culture of the Gambia, I was seeing writing on the wall that the future was not very promising. And even at the level of the United Nations, I alerted the Peace Building Commission, chaired then by our friend Kamau. I told him it's important to make a statement where we enjoin the government to respect the will of the people. I did not care much about me losing my job as an ambassador. What was important is for the verdict of the people to stand. He went to the Peace Building Commission, asked them to issue a statement, but they said, no, you cannot issue a statement, everything is. He said, but the ambassador spoke to me, and I think we should take his view into consideration. And during that week, wherever I went, and people will be clapping, praising the Gambia, I say, be mindful. Let's not be carried away by this euphoria. And the very day he made a U-turn, I met with the then chair of the Security Council. And he said, everything is fine. I said, everything is not fine. He said, why are you saying that? I said, I'm Gambian. I know my culture. And there are signs when you see them, you know that this is not promising. So in the evening when he made the U-turn, everybody thought maybe I was a soothsayer. No, I think it's important for people to be humble enough and to have the decency to listen to those who are concerned, the nationals of each and every country. You cannot sit in New York, in Brussels, in Geneva and think that you know the country more than those who are coming from those countries. So it's important that our views are taken on board and into consideration. So when he made the decision to make a U-turn, Kamau, then the chair of the Peace Building Commission, went back to them and said, I told you. And then now we started mobilizing the international community, because Gambia alone was not in a position to do it. Because where you have a government with all the military might, with all the police, it's difficult for them to say you will challenge them. And when you do that challenge, I mean, having some kind of uprising will be the best thing that you could do to that government, because then they drag you into the field where they master the rules of the games. But then the UN issued a statement, and ECOWAS followed, and our neighbors, our immediate neighbor Senegal, also decided to mobilize forces to make sure that the verdict of the people stand. And one most important lesson to be learned from the Gambia experience is the immediate application of sustainable peace program that the Gambia government identified in connection with that situation. And what happened is that immediately after, the Peace Building Commission undertook a mission to the Gambia with the Department of Political Affairs. Just after ECOWAS mobilized, because all the heads of states of the region, from President Buhari to the outgoing president of Sierra Leone, all the region mobilized to make sure that we avoid another violent conflict and make sure that the verdict of the people will stand. And when things started to be tough, other African brothers were involved in the process, and that's how we got Equatorial Guinea to intervene. And Chad, Chad facilitated, many people do not know that, but Chad facilitated even some of the requests made by the then president to evacuate some of his vehicles and materials. So that was a conflict where Africa mobilizes its resources, ECOWAS, our immediate neighbor, and thanks to the intervention and the UN, we avoided a major conflict. And then immediately after, the Peace Building Commission, as I said, and the Department of Political Affairs came to the Gambia. And just like in a perfect world, where you have no silos between different UN bodies, they work in harmony, in hands in glove. And they provided the seed money to kickstart the transitional program in the Gambia, which culminated in the adoption of the National Development Plan the setting up of the Truth, Reconciliation and Reparation Commission and the Constitutional Review Commission. And today, we are witnessing a very traumatic experience in the Gambia where during the Truth, Reconciliation and Reparation Commission, people are coming and making statements, confessing. But as a nation, that's what we need, because the truth will free people. La vérité libère. Et cela a permis à beaucoup de gens de venir, de confesser ce qu'ils ont fait comme crime, et ce qui va permettre à la nation de se réconcilier avec elle-même et de savoir que ce qui est important, c'est de mettre avant tout l'intérêt supérieur de la nation au-dessus de tout. Et aujourd'hui, on travaille sur ça, et pour la première fois aussi dans l'histoire de la Gambie, nous avons deux chefs d'État et du Sénégal qui sont sur la même longueur d'onde. Et le résultat de cette coopération est ce pont de la Sénégambie. Since 1976, I saw one of the interviews of President Jawara when he went to France. He was talking about this bridge. But the reality, the fact of the matter is that there was no political will to make it happen. But thanks to these two presidents, this is a major and a landmark project for regional integration between Gambia and Senegal, and the whole sub-region will benefit from it. The Peace Building Commission proactive efforts in sustaining peace in the Gambia extends its mandate beyond providing support to peace efforts in post-conflict countries to sustaining peace in fragile countries. This is manifestly in line with the Security Council Resolution 2282 and General Assembly Resolution 7262, the Sustaining Peace Agenda, which encompasses the whole conflict. That's the problem with technology, which encompasses the whole conflict cycle ranging from prevention to peace building, and has introduced a new paradigm shift across the United Nations peace and security architecture. The 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development also reinforced the Sustaining Peace Agenda by laying a solid foundation for the creation of peace and inclusive societies. United Nations Secretary General, upon taking office, has launched an appeal for peace which attaches great importance to conflict prevention and sustaining peace. The Gambia is neither a post-conflict country nor a situation country on the PBC agenda, rather a country in fragility where preventive diplomacy with a touch of action prevail. Today, the Gambia is an authority that can speak in favor of balanced preventive diplomacy and preventive action as a beneficiary. And we live in a region, nous sommes dans une région où, moi je le dis très souvent, ce qui affecte l'un de nos pays directement affecte tout le monde indirectement. Nous avons vu le conflit qu'il y a eu au Mali et la mobilisation de la CEDEAO pour faire face à ce conflit. Mais nous savons tous que la CEDEAO uniquement, et avec le Mali, ne pouvait pas faire face à ces forces obscures djihadistes. Parce que la force de frappe qu'ils avaient sans l'intervention extérieure, aujourd'hui, le Mali serait une base arrière pour toutes les forces djihadistes. Donc personne ne serait épargné dans la sous-région. Donc le combat que nous menons au Mali, ce n'est pas seulement pour le Mali, mais c'est pour l'ensemble de la sous-région et même au-delà de la sous-région. Parce que ce que ces gens cherchent, c'est d'avoir une base arrière qui vont leur permettre de lancer leurs attaques un peu partout. Et là, nos collègues ont parlé du rôle de l'Inde dans ce monde multilatéral. L'Inde constitue une force sur laquelle nous pouvons compter aujourd'hui. And we are all together with India for the reform of the Security Council that does not reflect the reality of this world today. And Africa has a common position, and even though we have our common position, some of us were very active in the L65 Setsano, where headed by India is playing a pioneering role there, and we will go and exchange our views with the sole and unique objective of reforming the Security Council to reflect the realities of the world. And at the UN, we all know the strong voice of India. and Africa has been working hand in glove with India, the African group, and that manifested itself even during the election of Justice Bandari, where up to the last minute the competition was very tough with some candidates from the United Kingdom and others, but we decided to support India. And at some point they knew that, well, though at the Security Council I think the order had a majority vote, but the General Assembly is the ultimate body, and we continue voting, and from one voting to another, for one round of voting to another, the number keep on increasing. So at some point they understood that we definitely have to withdraw. So that's the kind of cooperation we are all seeking with countries like India that have been partnering, fighting alongside Africa during our liberation struggle up to today. And we always say that India is a country where we can learn a lot, because you have all kinds of, we've seen how you've graduated from an underdeveloped country to a developing and developed countries. Though you still maintain that you are not a developed country, but we know that India is a powerhouse in this world. And the United Nations is the ultimate body where we really need to take the struggle, because as Dag Hammarskjöld used to say it, if the United Nations cannot bring peace, but it can, let me quote him right, it has been said that the United Nations was not created in order to bring us to heaven, but in order to save us from hell. And I think today that's the role of the United Nations, and we must all make sure that we have a very effective organization. And I'm confident that with the reforms going on, we will have an organization that will serve its purpose. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Excellency, for that very insightful and very comprehensive presentation of the multilateralism and the role, particularly in the context of conflicts in Africa. And you very rightly pointed out the importance of conflict prevention, and it should be given more importance than conflict resolution. But of course, you also pointed out it's a controversial subject. What interested me also was that you referred to the 2017 election in the Gambia. And let me assure you, Your Excellency, we in India who have been following Africa were those days watching with great admiration the way in which democracy was restored in the Gambia. And it would not have been possible, even though there were help from outside. The sheer vision and the hard work of the Gambians themselves, and how they stood their ground to restore democracy. It was a moment of great celebration for everyone who believes in democracy. And the more important thing is that was a message that came from Gambia and Africa to the rest of the world. And the other example that you gave also is very interesting. The agreement between Senegal and Gambia is another message that is being given on sub-regional integration. In fact, that is another topic that we in India admire in Africa, the pace at which Africa is getting integrated is a great achievement. And probably we are not that integrated in this part of the world as Africa is. So I think we have to learn a lot from Africa, particularly on the question of sub-regional and regional integration. With that, may I open the floor, and maybe we can take 2 or 3 questions together, because there will be repetition of the same question. You can. The floor is open. Please identify yourselves briefly for the sake of His Excellency, and please be brief in your questions and comments. Please.
Good evening. I am Surabhi. I am a research fellow at the Council. Your Excellency, it was an excellent presentation. My question is more general in nature. You spoke about Gambia's experience and the UN's role in conflict. And speaking from your experience, how do you view UN? We often speak about how it's become redundant and the need for reform of the United Nations. So flowing from Gambia's experience, your take on the current multilateral order and the need for reform.
Please, here, the second row.
Yeah, Dr. Sarojit Dudija. Excellency, can you share your experience of both regime during dictatorship and after the democracy? How human life has changed, whether it's our common life on general common man and particularly women's life, whether they have changed a lot or same thing is happening?
Thank you, Chair. My question is relating to the region, particularly relating to the terrorism aspect that we're seeing in West Africa. And since the subject relates to multilateralism, we have seen that multilateral efforts have been made to tackle the issue of terrorism, particularly the multilateral joint task force. How do you think, has it been effective, or do you think it is still in a work in progress?
Thank you very much. For the first question of the research fellow of the council, certainly in the Gambia will not see the UN as a redundant organization, because as I said, as in a perfect world, the Gambia is cited as an example, even by the Secretary General, for his agenda on sustaining peace. Because in the Gambia, as I said, just after the conflict, and even during the impasse, the UN played a key role in mobilizing forces and endorsing the intervention of ECOWAS. That would have been difficult without the support of the UN Security Council. And later on, the UN came, and without any cumbersome and tedious procedure, kick-started the process. And just after the intervention of the political department, and today the reforms exactly is trying to do concretely what happened in the Gambia, because there you do not have any silos between the two different bodies, because you have competing agencies of the UN in a country where you have to go through a lot of procedures even to have access to funds that will enable you implement your action. But in the case of the Gambia, just as in a perfect world, just after the arrival of the head of the political department, the political affairs department head came, and from there he announced that the support will come, just immediately followed by the Peace Building Commission and the Peace Building Support Office. And the money was disbursed, and we kick-started the whole process. So at least in the case of the Gambia, we've seen a very effective organization. And I think without the endorsement of the UN and the intervention of ECOWAS, we would have been in a very terrible situation. For the question of Gambia before and after dictatorship, we in the Gambia, dictatorship has its debilitating effects, where everything is around a personality cult, where everybody tries to please one person. And at some point you even wonder what is happening to the people, because everything you do is geared towards satisfying one person. And you have a pyramidal system where everything is decided by one person. And that is maintained through a climate of fear. And that's why I'm talking about debilitating effects. And today in the Gambia, you have, before, people would not even have a normal conversation, because you don't know whether this one is working for the secret police or you're going to be arrested the next day. Today people are speaking without fear. On social media, in the streets, they are not even looking behind them whether someone is watching them or not. But that's also the danger, because after the change of regime, people think that their life will be changed overnight, not realizing that this is a country with little resources. People did the changes with a lot of expectation. So up to today, the fact of the matter is that government is grappling with managing the expectations. Because we went to Brussels, we had a very successful donor conference with huge promises, and when we came back from Brussels, people thought that you are coming with the money, not knowing that people are talking about donor fatigue, but there are also pledges fatigue. Because you go to many conferences where you hear people pledging millions, billions, but at the end of the day, you don't even see the color of the money. But the population will not understand that. Just a simple little story. Just after the donor conference, we had a program in, I think it was somewhere in Delaware, and someone took a video and posted, and they said, now they are eating our money, the money they got from Brussels. And when the president was coming in the convoy, they saw a black car, they said the money is inside that car. Not knowing that up to now we are running after the pledges, hoping that people will fulfill the pledge so that we can at least realize some of the dreams and then implement, translate into concrete action what is in our national development plan. And the third question,
what about women life?
The women. In Gambia, you know, women, not only in Gambia, you know, for me, the debate on women's sleep or the condition of women is a false debate in Africa that came with colonialism and with some of these religions. Because before them, African women occupied a pride of place in the society. You had queen like Queen Abrapoku of the Baules, you have Queen Anna Zinga, you have women participating in political life. It's only with religion and with colonialism that they were marginalized somehow. But Gambian women have been in the forefront of the struggle and have been very vocal, and I think they also play a major role in the changes. Because at some point they were saying that men are scared of this man. And I would not like to mention that, but one day we were having a chat with some of my younger colleagues, and he told me, you know, there is only one trousers in this country and one man is wearing it. I felt insulted, but at some point I said, well, maybe she's right, huh? Because, I mean, it's just like the one man is controlling the whole country. But the day that the woman decided to take the bulls by the horn, and we had the first female presidential candidate, and with the noise they made, they shook the society. And then when the men also knew that now it's time for us to rise up. So the women took the lead, and all credit goes to them. Yeah, thank you, Mr. Secretary General. And a new Ministry of Women's Affairs have been created, and the minister has just been recently appointed. All the time it was under the office of the Vice President, but I think it was last week that a very dynamic woman has been appointed as Minister of Women's Affairs. And the third question on the...
High Commissioner is a woman.
Yeah, I mean...
happy to have a woman High Commissioner. Yes.
Yeah, exactly. And one of our most dynamic ambassadors. Yeah. Huh? Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah. And on the cooperation to fight terrorism, yeah, I think it's proven to be very effective. You know, today we are having a asymmetric war. We are dealing with enemies that sleeps, dine, laugh with you, and at the night will come back and stab you in the back. Today we have a very effective cooperation of our intelligence services, because that's the only way, one of the ways you can fight them. Because it's not a conventional war, but the regional blocs, the multilateral partners are really helping in. The situation is not resolved, but at least without them we would have been in a very chaotic and serious situation. So I think it's proven to be effective. The battle, we've not yet won the war, and the battle is still on, but we'll fight it. Thank you.
We have time for a second round of 2 or 3 questions. That lady there, then one at the back, and you, 3.
My name is Kanchi Batra. I am from Diplomatist magazine. Excellency, we are aware that your country is fondly known as the smiling coast of Africa. I want to understand what has been done or what could be done to enhance soft diplomacy between India and Gambia. Thank you.
My name is Yaringam from Delhi University. I'm teaching there. Your Excellency, I just want to ask one very general question to you. You pointed out very clearly that India is a power today in the world. India's position has raised up so much that we are being recognized as a coming up nation in the world. But I just would like to ask you, are you satisfied with India's role in maintaining, building and sustaining peace in Africa, in particular in your country? If not, is there any area where you expect from India to involve more and contribute more in building and sustaining peace in Africa? So,
my brother here.
thank you so much.
Mike, please.
Assalamu alaikum. My name is Mr. Boy. I'm the ambassador of Senegal. As you know, I'm Francophone, but I will try to put my question in English. So, everybody can understand how glad I am to attend this meeting between Senegal and Gambia. In the Gambia, even if we are 2 countries, in essence, we are one people. Every day, our brothers and sisters cross the border. Very strong links between our 2 countries. So, as said my minister, situation before the present situation was very tough. So now this tough situation is behind us. Congratulations, Honorable Minister. I can say my minister. Thank you for your informative intervention. I'm sure that many among us have learned a lot from this post-election in Gambia. Mr. Minister, I just have a very small question. After this meeting, we will exchange in French. I will be more comfortable to discuss with you. To consolidate the peace building in our region, which values should we focus on right now? Thank you so much.
Thank you.
You can go ahead.
Yeah.
3 questions.
3 questions. I will start with the question of the journalist. I think the question you should have asked our ambassador, what is he doing, our high commissioner, on that. We have a sizable number of Indians living, working and doing business in the Gambia. And for a very long time, Gambia being an English-speaking country, we have a lot of Indians teaching in our high school. And some of the leaders of our country have been trained by Indians. I think at some point, I met one of the former presidents of the Maldives. He lived in Gambia. But then we thought he was Indian, from India, because they own a supermarket. And the Indian ambassadors based in Senegal covering the Gambia, one of them who is today senior international civil servant, Atul Kare, a very good friend of mine who is at the UN under Secretary General, told me he used to come to the Gambia to be able to buy English books because we then had a small bookshop in Banjul. So, but today I think the onus is on my humble self and the High Commissioner to make sure that the relationship between India and the Gambia grow from strength to strength, and then we have more Indians coming to the Gambia. But believe me, those who are living there, they are very comfortable. I do not know of any problem. They are well integrated, doing their business. But I think it's important that we encourage also Indian tourists to come to the Gambia. That's a way of the people-to-people diplomacy is very important, and that's what is that will consolidate our relationship. And I think that for a better future, we need to encourage that. So, Ambassador, you have a task at your hand, High Commissioner. On the second question, I do not remember.
Can you repeat it?
Yeah.
Are you satisfied with the role of India?
Okay.
Building and sustaining peace in Africa. If not, what do you expect more from it?
Yeah, thank you. Sorry, I had long hours of flight, and from there, so, yeah. India is present in many very difficult fields in Africa in peacekeeping operation. But I think with the position and the respect that India has in Africa, I think they can play more effective role in bringing people together and in the agenda of sustaining peace, because India in Africa is a voice to be reckoned with. On the question, what do we have to do? The values. Well, I always say that it's important that our traditional mechanism of resolving conflicts are taken on board, and even at the United Nations. That's why in the case of the Gambia, I think we were fortunate because people listened to us, because no one can love us more than ourselves, and no one knows our countries, our continent better than us. As far as Gambia and Senegal are concerned, I always say it's one nation with two states, and that's why I always believe in the fact that our diplomacy should be based on facts and truth, because only that can resist the tribulation of time. La diplomatie entre le Sénégal et la Gambie ne peut pas être une diplomatie de jeu de type. Ça, je le répète. Et puis, on doit aller au-delà de la rhétorique, c'est disant que oui, nous sommes une seule et même nation. Il faut qu'on puisse vivre ça concrètement. And for that to happen, for us to go beyond the rhetorics, we have to make sure that we go beyond the artificial barriers, like the borders. I have one of my professors, que vous devez certainement connaître, le professeur Lian Kestelot, qui disait que la culture ne connaît pas et ne reconnaît pas les frontières. Parce que nous constituons un seul et même peuple. Et si la Gambie et le Sénégal n'arrivent pas à donner l'exemple d'intégration en Afrique, en s'intégrant, ce n'est pas demain la veille de l'unité africaine. Ça, il ne faut même pas qu'on rêve. Donc nous avons un rôle de pionnier à jouer, et moi je suis convaincu de cela, et je reste. Il y a quelqu'un qui m'a accosté la dernière fois pour me dire que oui, si la Gambie est considérée comme une partie du Sénégal. Mais j'ai dit, mais c'est une seule et même nation. Moi, ça c'est mon souhait le plus ardent, de voir les deux peuples constituer un exemple d'intégration en Afrique. Merci.
Thank you, Excellency, for taking patiently all those questions and enlightening us on some of the very important aspects that our audience raised in the question hour. I don't have anything much to add except that on a personal note, I would like that on your next visit, we would like you to talk on a topic which is very interesting, personally for me, because of your research on myths and secrets of oral historians of the Mandinka. Why I am saying that? Because India has a great tradition in oral history. All our great philosophical thoughts over the millennia have been passed down through oral traditions. So I can promise you I am going to be in touch with the High Commissioner to see whether we can, at the ICWA or even at the Observer Research Foundation, get some of your scholars on oral traditions and have a seminar on that. I think we can learn a lot from each other. And if there are no other comments, ladies and gentlemen, please.
Can I say something?
Yeah, please.
I will be more than happy to come for that. You know, during my first visit to India, I insisted on visiting Kurukshetra to see where the battle of the Mahabharata took place. Yeah. because I was part of a network doing research on medieval and epic literature. So I will be more than happy. And because even in Africa, Africans, we know everything about others, but little about ourselves. That's the sad thing. I always give people examples where, when we talk about human rights, we refer to Magna Carta, à la Déclaration universelle de 1789, whereas you have something like the Fita Neges in Ethiopia, la Charte de Kouroukan-Fougan, but little do we know about it. And Senghor used to say, the president of Senegal, que nous avons de hauts monuments parlés entourés par un mur de silence. We have towering spoken monuments surrounded by a wall of silence. So the onus is on us to do the research to know what is in those, the substance that is in those towering spoken monuments. So I will be more than happy to have a discussion on that. Thank you.
In fact, it's time that we have our own narratives. We have been learning about each other through Western media. And I understand that Africa is a continent with more than 1 million proverbs, which is nothing but wisdom from ancient traditions. And since you mentioned about how we learn more from the West than about each other, I remember one African proverb that I would like to say. It says that till the day the lions write their story, the story of the hunt will glorify the hunter. But that is changing now. Now the lions are telling their own stories. So with that, I think I would conclude and hand over to the Director General.
On behalf of ICWA, I would like to thank His Excellency Dr. Mamadou Tangara for his insightful lecture. I would also like to thank Ambassador H.H.S. Viswanathan for chairing the event and DG ICWA for his remarks. I would also like to thank the audience for taking out the time to attend the lecture. Before we conclude, may I request DG ICWA to present our publication to our esteemed guest.
This is a set of our recent publications. So I hope you can pass them on to institutions. And this is our journal, which has been coming out from 1943. And these are some of the results of scholars working over here, including on multilateralism in Africa. And I have one set for you, Secretary General.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. The journal in particular, we have many scholars from Africa writing, and we welcome it if there are scholars, analysts from the Gambia who also could contribute.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I now invite you all to the foyer for high tea. Thank you so much.
Excellency. I learned so much. I always learn.